Greetings, this is Edodo Jumbo. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to use the PHP PDO extension. PDO stands for data object. Obviously, P stands for PHP. And you can see down here in the glossary, it explains what the data object is. It's just an abstraction layer for accessing databases. So if you want to know what that means, it's object-oriented. What that means is that you can use multiple databases or different databases with the same code. So it's not specifically tied to a single database. You can use the same code for multiple databases. This PDO is similar to other programming languages. In those other programming languages, the way you connect to the database is usually as an object, so it's object oriented, and then your code will stay the same. The only difference is obviously the connection will be slightly different. For example, in the tutorial today, we're going to do MySQL and we're going to do SQLite, two different databases. But you'll see the queries and everything. The function that does a query and the statements are all the same. So this is a benefit of PDO. Now, obviously, if you have something very specific for a particular database, for example, you will see in the way some of our SQL is different for SQLite and for MySQL, but you'll be able to run that separately. Now, of course, you can have another abstraction layer for specifically different things for the database, but for my particular use case, I've been doing this for a few decades, is that you can just do those as queries in order to do that. And if you have something very, very specific, of course, you can do that as well. Just leave it as query, or you can create your own slight abstraction for that. However, so we can actually get started here. So it's very simple. In the example here, I'm using it for MySQL. So you can compare this to the previous tutorial, which we used MySQL specific functionality, which was MySQL improved for PHP. But in this case, it's very simple. You just connect to the database. So the only thing that will be different between the functions you see are just how we connect to the database. So you see with in MySQL, because I do have a host, I do have a database name, and I have obviously the database user and the database password. That's the only difference. With SQLite, it's even simpler. You just put, instead of MySQL, it's SQLite, and obviously the colon, and then the path to where the database is. That's how SQLite works. It's a flat database, so it's just a single file. So there's no need for username, host name, and all of that. And for SQLite, and you see the query will be the same. You just you run the same command. It's query, and then here's where you could be specific to a database. So in this particular case, both selects will be exactly the same because it's a standard. Select everything from whatever the table name is. So that will be, in this example today, for SQLite and for MySQL, they're exactly the same. And then the fetching is also exactly the same. So you can fetch associate. I explained this before. Associate, that means you get the actual labels of the columns instead of the usually the default where you just fetch, and then you have to get them by the you start at 0, so it'll be 0, 1, 2, 3 if you have 3 columns. So the problem with that is maybe you delete some columns or whatever, so the position could change. So I prefer associate, but there are times when, if it's a very simple database table, yeah, you could just use the numbers, because for example, the first one will always be an ID. That's actually mandatory in SQLite. Even if you don't specify an ID, it always puts its own internally, makes it an ID, and then you have the field. So for example, if I was storing IP addresses, I would probably just have an ID and then the IP address. So in that case, I would always know that the second field is always going to be what I want. So in that case, I could say 1, but I'm saying a fetch is better because you can get the label, and then you can, in your code, you can always use that. I prefer that. So what I've done is I'll explain this when we actually do the code, the coding part. But here's the MySQL code, specific code. So what this code does is it will create a database if it doesn't exist, and you create a table if it doesn't exist, and then you also insert some data if it doesn't exist. So you get to learn quite a bit in this tutorial today. And then here for the command line, how you can run the code. Now, you could simply just take this code here and put it in your GUI and just go to SQLite and just paste it there. That will work as well. But I'm going to run on the command line. But I'll show you how you can also run it graphically as well. So you're covered. Now for SQLite, I have the command line. So because SQLite, the database is actually just a file, so we don't need the create database part. It's basically created from the SQL, so we just create a table instead. We also insert data, and then you see the first changes in the SQL code. They're still standard, but there's a few few differences we will see there. And of course, we can run the code here. This will be on the command line, and also I also have the PHP code here. So the PHP code, you can also how obviously that's what this title this tutorial is about, is how to connect to both a MySQL database and a SQLite database, and run a query and obviously output that data. So we can obviously do the command line, which I'll show you up here when I say run code, and then we can also use PHP. So the reason why it's a good idea to be able to run on the command line or the graphical way is that way you can test your queries before you actually just start writing PHP. Sometimes I personally find it better that way, but a lot of people prefer just writing straight PHP. Then they'll come to me and say, oh my goodness, my query is not working, and then I'll help them debug. But obviously that's the way I prefer to do it myself. So I explain what all this does here, and then you can see here, this is the one I used for MySQL, the first screenshot. I just basically use Nano on the command line. I'm not going to use Nano, I'll use NetBeans, so you see graphically, so you see a little bit better. And then up here in the command line, I just run this basically whatever remember last time we created a user in PHP MyAdmin, and also on the command line, how to create a MySQL user name and password just for specifically to a database. And then you can also make one for specific tables, but the database is better because we want to create our own tables. And then you see this is the same, I'll show you as well also in PHP MyAdmin. So this will just take this data there. And then also we also have the one for, I made a little mistake here. I didn't create one, but that's fine. So, and this is the one for SQLite. So it's obviously you see in the video here. So is this correct? Oh, SQLite. Okay, so that's a SQLite, and this is the MySQL, and then we would run it in PHP as well. So PHP code, I said you can just get the code snippet from here. That's why I didn't create a specific screenshot for that, but if you want me to, I can. It's not a big deal. You know what? I think I'll do that just because. Okay, I'll add one after I finish, and this is the video. And just want to let you know that every day I do host a live stream. Visit ojambo.com for details. You can scroll down to the footer to see the different channels. Subscribe, like, follow, and leave comments for more frequent content. Okay, so let's begin. So the first thing we're going to do is I have my SQL database up and running, and I also have SQLite installed, and you can get, obviously, you can get SQLite from SQLite.org. And MySQL, you can just get it's open source as well, so you can download it in multiple ways. The one I'm using is MariaDB, so it's a fork of MySQL, but it's very compatible with MySQL. Okay, so here's the command line, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 SQL files. I can do it in the command line. However, as I promised, I want to do it using, I'll use NetBeans for that. So I'm going to start up NetBeans here in just a second. so you'll be able to see it. So while NetBeans is running, it's opening up. What I'm going to do is, okay, while NetBeans is opening up, I'll show you the graphic way of how, actually, I need the code first. So, but I'll show you the easy way using PHP MyAdmin. So here in PHP MyAdmin, you simply go to, you click on the database, and then you click on create a new table. You put the table name in here, and then the number of columns you want. So in this case, we need 3 columns. As you can see here, there's 3 of them, and the first one will be an integer, and it's also going to be a primary key and auto incrementing. The second one is going to be the name, which is a text field, and the last one, which is age, and that's an int of 3 because that's ages, human ages. The maximum is 999. That's why, and that's it. And then that will be in your students. Now, of course, if you have root access or a way to do it, you can also create a user. I'm not logged in as the root. I just logged in as the tutorial user who was specific to this database called tutorial up here, and then that one I can create tables. So that's how to do it graphically. It's pretty straightforward. Now we're gonna head back to the command line, and so on the command line, I'm just going to create some files here. So I'll create, I'm gonna create tutorial.sql, and I'm also going to create students.sql. So the first one, the tutorial, this one is going to create a database if it doesn't exist. And this one, the second one, is just going to create students if they don't exist. So the first one will be for MySQL. The second one is going to be for SQLite. So with this open, and NetBeans should be up and running now. Where is NetBeans? Yes, it is. NetBeans is here. So what I can do is I simply go to our folder, this special folder here. Let me put it on always on top. And then I'm going to look for SQL TTT UST for tutorial. Yeah, here we go. The tutorial, put it there. And we have the other one, which was students. Yeah, students. So let's go to tutorial, and we'll delete all of this. Okay, so I'll zoom in. Okay, so zoomed in pretty well. So very simple. So the first thing we do is we need to create a database. So what we'll do is we say create database if not exists, and the name is tutorial. Okay, then we want to use that database, so we'll be use tutorial, and then now we need to create a table, database table. So we say create table if not exists, and the name will be students. Then parentheses in there and semicolon at the end. So in here we just tab, and then as I said before, so SID, the SID will be an int, and it will be not now, and it's also auto increment. I believe in one of the differences in MySQL and SQLite is in MySQL it's underscore increment and comma. Then name, this is simply going to be a text, it will be not now. And then we have age, as I said, it's an int, but 3, and it will be not now. And finally we have primary key, which will be the SID. Okay, so we are finished here. Now we can test to see if this works. You can grab this, and if we go back here, for example, I can drop this, and I'm going to drop this table, and you see what will happen. So I'll drop it. Yes, and I'm gonna, so can I use SQL? Oh, I can't use SQL here. So that's fine, we dropped it. Okay, there's no way, there's console, no, there's a console. Oh, here we go, console. I'm gonna paste it in here, and can I run that? How do we run this? Oh, control enter, okay, so control enter. So could not create database table because it already exists, so that's fine, that's a warning. And use tutorial, and then you see it created the table. So if I refresh, I should have a table here. Yeah, see I have students, but you see now it's empty, there's nothing in there. So next what we need to do is add our, so I'll delete it again after, just to show you that, well, it's empty right now, but so we'll go to here. So I'm gonna delete it just to show you that the database was fine. So next what we're gonna do is we're gonna add some data to our table here. So what you can do is, I said, you can see if we go here to expand source, this is basically all we're doing. So you can simply just copy this there, and then that's basically what we're doing. So we go back here. So this part works. There was no problems. I didn't make any mistakes. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, just so I can type. So we insert into students. So remember, because the SID is auto incrementing, so we don't actually need to fill that. It will be automatically filled, so we don't need to worry about that. So we just need a name and age. So if you actually do a search, you see they'll put values, and then you put the values. The reason I'm not going to do that is because, remember, I might make some mistakes, so I need to make sure that it doesn't just continuously keep on inserting the same data over and over again. So I need a way to check to see if the data already exists, or the row already exists in the database table, and then insert it if it doesn't exist. So for that, what I need to do is I'm going to use a select all from, and then a sub. This is called a subquery. Select. So John, it's a little bit harder, but unfortunately, because MySQL doesn't have built-in ways to, for something like something like if not it exists, you know, you have to come out with your own special query to do something like this. So that's fine. So we say where not exists. But because it's another way of doing this actually does work pretty well, and also works for all databases, including SQLite. Oh, SQLite is not necessarily very old. It's just that databases that are simple, this query will work in all of them. So name from students, where name equals John and age. I like to use caps so I know which ones are the reserved words. Age equals 23. Then I'll say limit 1. Then what I can do is I'm just going to copy this. I think you got it now, and just simply paste it 2 times. Okay, so here John, we change this to Jane, and the age will be 24. And here this one will be Darcy. I'll come back to that second, but let's fix this one up first. So this is Jane and 24. And this one is Darcy. So it's D Darcy. Now you can see there's a problem here because Darcy has this, I guess, apostrophe. So the problem is, you will see if you do a search online, they will tell you just to put an extra, if you're using single quotes, put an extra single thing, and this will work. I have tried this and it didn't work for me. It hasn't worked for me. I don't think it's ever worked for me. So what I do is, what works for me is the escape. So that's a backslash. This is what works for me. Now, if this works for you like this with 2 single quotes, great. But I said that never worked for me. So I just escape it like this with a slash. A backslash. So the age here is going to be 35. Okay, and then so here change this again, and the 35. Okay, so now we're done, and this is the data. So we can simply copy this into PHP manually, but we're going to run this on the command line to make sure that it actually does work. So remember, the file is called tutorial.sql. So let me go and copy this code here because it's not needed. Okay, so if we now, this is the code here, so zoom out a little bit. Zoom out so you can see all the code before we run it on the command line. Oh, no, not quite. There we go. Now you should be able to see all of it. So this is the code, and this is the code we're going to run on the command line. So if you remember our command line, we left off here with this empty file tutorial.sql. Now we've just filled it and we saved it. So what we can do next is we need to run it. So just type MySQL. The user was the tutorial, and P, that will allow us to ask for a password, this keyword, and then we say tutorial.sql. So that's for the password to. Okay, so it says there's a problem here. Oh yeah, I forgot to put a semicolon at the end. So very simple mistake. Let's go back here. No, I did put a. Oh. So select all from. Let's actually read the error. It says John, where not exists. Select name. Oh, name from. John. Why did I make the mistake here? Let's see. One. Where not exists. This seems. I probably forgot to select John, comma 23, name age, insert, select all from, select as temp, where not exists, select name from students. Oh, here we go. I think this is the problem. I spelled students. You see here, this is the mistake. I think it's case sensitive. It doesn't exist. So let's go and fix. Oh yeah, here we go. So this is a mistake. Yeah, so it's case sensitive. So the table is, because remember the table is called students, not capitalized. So now if we run this again, it should work. Yeah, you see, there was no problem. Now we can check to see what's going on. So I'll use echo here. I'll use single quote, that's fine. So I'll say use. The database to use is tutorial. And then I can say select. This one is case insensitive, but I like to use uppercase just so I can know if something is wrong. Select all from students. And then we pipe this into MySQL -u tutorial -p. Let me put this up a little bit so you can see. There we go. So the password is and you can see, so it has data. And I don't need to tell you anymore, because now if we go back to PHP you notice, so now we just go here, and you can see our students has 3 rows now, and those are just like before. You see now we have John, Jane, and Darcy, and you see the ages, the ages here as well, and you see it auto increment. Remember, I didn't add a SID value; it automatically auto incremented. So this is MySQL, and you see it does work. So what we're going to do next is, you know what? Let's actually jump into. Let's start creating the PHP part as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag it out. Let's do the PHP part first. So here's the PHP. So we delete everything. Oops. Okay. Yeah, so we'll do the PHP. So let me see the PHP. I'll zoom in here so you can see. Okay, next, this is going to be object. I don't feel like typing all of this. So it's object-oriented interface to connect and fetch a single row for the MySQL database. Okay, so I'll say PDO 1 equals a new PDO, and we'll say MySQL and the host equals localhost, and semicolon, DB name equals tutorial, okay, and then tutorial is the name of the user, and then the password. Okay, so we have connected, and then what I'll do is I do want to set some attributes. Attribute. What's wrong? Attribute. Come on. So the attribute you want to set is the one you want to set is attribute error mode and error mode exception. Okay. Next, we create a statement. Goes PDO 1 and a query. And it's like so much time to replace the keyboard. I go through keyboard so quickly. Select SID from students and limit 1. I just need 1, that's enough. I'm just keeping it same as previous tutorial, so it will be easier for people to compare. And then we'll execute. And then of course we get the result. We're only fetching a row. 1 fetch. And as I said before, I prefer the associative result. Okay, then I can just echo it. Okay, so if I run this, so here in NetBeans, I just go to run and I click run file, and that's okay. If there's, and you see the number is 1 here. You see down here, the number is 1. So there's no problem here. Now, We're going to do the same thing for the SQLite. So it's exactly the same thing. You can just copy this. It's oops. What in the world happened there? Okay, bro. So fetch. See, we're just going to change this to, and this we're going to say SQLite database. And as I said before, all of this stuff here is not needed. It's actually extremely simple. All it is SQLite colon and the path to where your SQLite database is. So in my case, it's going to be, I'm going to call it tutorial.db. Obviously, if there's a different path, you just put the path. You can even use an actual path as long as PHP is able to find it. So everything else is exactly the same. So this is the benefit of using the PHP data object. So there we go. So obviously, I can leave everything the same, but for good coding practice, there's actually been instances where I had to connect to two different databases. So in order to not cause any confusion, this is why I'm changing all this to a different one, because let's say this was one database, a MySQL database, and then this is a different, so my point is that keep the objects separate. So you'll know that, okay, this one is only for MySQL, and this is only for SQLite or another database you're connecting to. So this is the only two databases we're using for this tutorial. But if you had other databases, you could still create another object, just the same code here, and it will also run. PHP PDO actually can connect up to 12 different databases. They just have database specific drivers. So I said in my particular case, I do have SQLite and MySQL, because those are the ones I use the most as of recording of this video. Okay, so this is the so obviously this is not going to run right now because we don't have, this file doesn't exist. So we need to create this file. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the students here, and we're going to create the SQL for why can't I zoom in? There we go. So this is for SQL. This is for SQLite. So create table if not exists students. It's very similar to the other one because the SQL language is actually a standard. I believe IBM invented it, or back in the 70s, I believe. So you see the first difference is SQLite uses the word integer instead of int. Now there's some aliases, so it's making more compatible with MySQL. For example, int will also work, but I'm showing you the actual names. So then primary key. So here's another difference. In MySQL, primary key is usually a separate row or line. Here you can put everything on one line. And the other difference is between this and MySQL is that auto increment. You see, this one doesn't have an underscore. You see just the word auto increment. So that will cut you out. So just be aware of that. Okay, so the next one is name. This is text. So not now. That's fine. If you notice, you technically for the first one you actually don't need to put primary key. I think it's if you put auto increment, it will know it has to be a primary key. But I suggest good coding practices so you don't get caught out if you ever move to between databases, which does happen. And SQLite is actually very popular. It's the one that's used the default database for Android and iOS, obviously mobile devices, and because it's free and open source, similar to MySQL, because this is flat database, it's small. It's also in web browsers. So when you have the local storage, it's actually mostly, if not a subset of SQLite. Okay, so we have this, and this will be not now, and so I'm gonna leave this as int just to show you that I can leave this as int because instead of typing integer, because I said they have an alias and the alias goes to integer. So actually the way SQLite works, everything is actually saved as a text. Internally, when you put int, it will then it will still save it as text, but for usually just for compatibility purposes with database, especially MySQL, it will understand if you put int decimal, but it's really just a text at the that's really how it treats everything. Okay, so this is all we need for create a table. Now you might say, hey, how come you're not creating a database? I'll show you how to create a database. It's different from MySQL. So the other part where we insert the data, it's slightly different, but everything is still the same. So name, age, and we say select from, again select John 23 as temp, where not exists, select name from students, where name equals John and age equals 23 in limit 1. Limit 1 is another copied straight from MySQL. So we take this, paste it here, and then change this out, paste another one as well. So then this obviously becomes Jane, and this is 24. So we'll go here, this will be Jane, and this is 24. And this is 35. This is Darcy. You will see the difference here. So Darcy, if you remember, Darcy has an apostrophe. Right. However, in SQLite 3, the one I'm using at the time of this recording, the slash doesn't work, so you need to use the double quotes instead. Okay, so I'll just copy that so I can, here we go, and 35. Okay, so we save that. Now we're gonna hop over to the command line again. So here we are on the command line, and so let me clear this because now we're, actually I wonder if I can just, does it remember? Yes, it does. Okay, perfect. No, it doesn't. Okay, so okay, I'll just clear this so it's easier for you. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is, remember we saved this as students.sql, right? So what you do is you take SQLite 3 and then you come up with a name. So my name, I'm just going to call it tutorial.db, and then we use this left arrow. Is that right? Left arrow symbol, and then we say students.sql. So you see now our database has been created. So this is how you create a database in SQLite. It basically, each file, like this one, tutorial.db, that is actually the database. So this is a portable database. You can take it and put it on your phone. For example, you can even download SQLite databases from your, say, Android, and I don't know if you can do it on the iPhone, but you can do this on Android. For example, if you're creating an app on Android, it's very easy to create one locally, and then you can push it to your device. So if you're testing, especially things like, for example, when I was creating apps about 16 years ago, I wanted to store the high scores. So I stored them in a SQLite database. Now, back then people were saying you should store it in a flat file, an XML file. The problem I didn't want to do that is because if it gets too big, because if you get too big and maybe you want to add things, yes, you can still do a simple flat file with serialization. The problem I didn't want to do that, I said, is because I wanted to move some things or perform updates. I wanted to keep. I was thinking about the future, and obviously it was overkill, but those are the type of things you can. And then around that time, obviously, Google for Android, they recommended you start using because it's so easy to create them on Android. I'm sure iOS is the same way. Okay, so now we want to test to make sure that our that our database has been created properly. So what we do is you just type SQLite 3, pick the database, so database tutorial.db, and then what we do is I'm going to use single quotes, so I can simply say select all from students. Okay, so if I press enter, it should select everything. Yes, here we go. You see, it says these are the SIDs 1, 2, 3, and you see these are the names John, Jane, Darcy, and then the ages 23, 24, and 35. So now I know that this is what our database contains. It contains one table called students, and this is it here. So everything is fine now. So now we're finished with the command line here. We can go back to our PDO file here. And now, as you can see, as I said before, remember it's called tutorial.db. That's the only difference between the this and this one up here. So we should get 1, 1 as the result. When I run this, actually I'm going to change this up a little bit so it's in separate lines. So I'm going to, what is it here? It's /n. And I'll put this one also /n. So they're separate lines, so you understand. I'll add something here. I'll say for SQLite. I'll say from SQLite. I'll say from SQLite. And then I'll add that as well. And I think I need to actually use, yes. And this one I'll say from MySQL. I think I will do that. There we go. And this one I will use this is the symbol for a new line. Okay, so if you're on Windows, I think you have to do that as well. So I'll do it for Windows as well, so you can follow. Okay, so now I'm going to run this. I'm in NetBeans, NetBeans 25. I go run file, okay, and you can see one from MySQL and one from SQLite. So as you can see, it works. So this way, this is the benefit of using the PHP data object, or PDO, is that you can connect to multiple databases. So this is extremely popular. This is convenient if you're creating your application. I've actually used this in the past where there was a promotion a client was running, and they didn't know how long they're going to run it for. They actually happened running for 4 years. So I didn't want to mark up because they also had limited resources. So what I did was for IP addresses for this particular promotion they're running, I just saved in a SQLite database, obviously outside the web root, and then I was able to do that, and then without touching the MySQL database. Of course, I could have done everything in MySQL database, but it was for that use case, the SQLite was actually better. And obviously, when the promotion was done, it's been done for, as I said, probably 14 years or etc. So then I'll simply just delete the SQLite database without having to touch the the MySQL. Okay, so that's it for the coding. So let's head back to the article. We go here. Just a quick reminder that Every day I do host a live stream. Visit ojambo.com for details. Scroll down to the footer to see the different channels. Subscribe, like, follow, and leave comments for more frequent content. So right now I am promoting the Learning PHP course on ojamboshop.com. You can learn at your own pace 24/7. All you need is a web browser. It comes with a built-in web IDE, and you simply go to ojambo.com/learning-php. There's also a book version. The book version doesn't come with the IDE, so you have your own text editor and web browser to follow along. It's available on Amazon. You search for Edward Ojambo, links will be in the description. So also the URL for this is ojambo.com/php PDO Extension. The links will all be in the description. They're also here under references. So if you enjoy this, please consider supporting me. Purchase one of my WordPress plugins at ojambo.com. Enroll in my programming courses at ojamboshop.com. Buying my programming books on Amazon. Search for Edward Ojambo, links in the description. Hiring me for your programming and app development needs at ojamboservices.com. Or becoming a donor at ojambo.com/donate. So you can donate here or up here in the header. You see it's on every page. It's fixed a header. There you go. Just go there and you can donate that way. And as I promised, see the links under here, references, and if you scroll down to the footer here, all the channels, Odyssey, Rumble, BitChute, and YouTube. I'll come up with a way to maybe make it as a future tutorial on how I'll make this easier so you can be able to follow me when I'm doing a live stream. I'll probably put it up somewhere here, maybe like a calendar or something. Okay, so that's it. See you in the next one.